Oh, okay, holy Jim, this is Justin Game 44 here. As you can see, I have clearly died. Uh, well, okay, who am I kidding? No, I can't really do this. This is too much funny. Okay, no, hello YouTube, this is Justin Game 44 here, and today we are here to do a review of Episode 3 of the Amazing Digital Circus. This one is personally an interesting one. It's about a horror house theme, which is basically a horror game theme for the adventure. So let's begin. The episode starts off with the whole entire group just wandering around what we can just consider as like a living room space since there's multiple couches. They're all watching Pono holding in her breath, and apparently they're seeing what happens since they're in a virtual reality that she can't technically suffocate herself by holding her breath. And as she does, she keeps like blinking colors. And we learn that each character who does hold a breath, something happens differently. Ryan, her hair goes straight. Gango, her head spins around. Sumi, her arms go straight, I believe. And besides all of that, Kinger glows in the dark. As for Sax, well, we really don't know about him since he says he likes to keep it a secret. He even did a fourfold joke, but eventually they are going on their next mission. Well, I guess that's what I just call it, a mission, when technically it's just a simple adventure. Now, what happens in this adventure is that they go to a horror house theme, and they are even given a choice. Sumo, though, doesn't want to go, and as always, leaves and has no interest. While Kane, on the other hand, is disappointed, but this time wanting to know why she's not interested. So while the rest go on, those two kind of like have a therapy session. It's kind of interesting, but apparently this type of thing has happened multiple times before between the two. And during this therapy session, it's like weird in a way. Because like she explains that she doesn't really like her body and she doesn't really like being here in a way. And it kind of makes sense. Like she's basically a bunch of random toys put together. And Kang really cannot really understand it. And when Kang starts to feel like he's not good at doing any adventures, that when she starts bringing up the fact that no one actually likes them, he starts like glitching everything out like he doesn't know what to say or think about it. To saying that's his only purpose and everything. And if he can't do that, then what good is he then? And start glitching out, which she has to try to change up the subject to get for him to stop glitching out the whole entire circus. But yeah. During this time though, while all that was going on, the group are all basically in the haunted house. They are given a choice. Go to all ages, which is basically completely friendly and something that basically kids could play. Or you basically go to the adult version where it's actually horrifying and terrified to go to. That really is not for kids. In this case, Kinger and Pawnee go by accident because Sax had through Gangle's mask, which caused the door to open, and it was a big mouth, and the two got stuck inside, leaving the other three to go into the other room. Now, we really don't see what the three really do until almost at the ending, but we'll get to there soon. During this time, Panu and Kinger are basically in a horrifying house area where there's heads hanging all around that represents the different players, but there's one at the fireplace with a tape recorder, which this kind of reminds me of Bending in the Ink Machine, and I know there are other games like this. This also did kind of remind me before they all split up into the two different doors. When Sax basically sucked up the ghosts, I actually thought it kind of reminded me of like a Ouija ghost sucking equipment. But anyway, what happens during this time is that they're going through, and slowly they eventually find out this monster that's been chasing them was actually an angel. And it turns out the guy who was rotating all these quarters was the ghost, basically tricking them to kill and harm the angel. And so what happens is they get sucked into hell. Now, okay, quick note just in case people are wondering what the heck I'm talking about. The guy first starts off saying he was hunting down a creature. He took the head, but the body disappeared when he turned around. Only later the body came back to try to reclaim its head, and the head is also alive and everything, still trying to get him. And eventually he locks himself down in the cellar after he has gone completely insane. And he pretty much murdered his whole entire family because of it, going insane. And when he did finally kill it, once again, it actually dragged him into hell. And the whole entire point of this was that he is now basically stuck in the hallway of Dem and waiting for a new body and everything to take over so he can leave the place. And sadly, Kinger and Pawnee fell for the trap and were dragged into hell. I have to say, I actually really did enjoy the whole entire horror theme. But during this, all that happens, eventually we do finally get a chance to see what's going on with the other three, which is really nothing much. They're just having tea with the dead wife, which apparently she kind of knows what goes on in a way where she basically explains, but she's completely fine with it. And they're all just drinking tea and talking. Really, I think it was just having fun with ghosts, like just having a chat. Not gonna lie, I was curious to know how the whole entire thing went before we got to that point. But we really don't. But once it was over and everything, they left. And Jax, though, throughout the whole time was tied up into a wagon with his mouth tied so he couldn't speak. And I mean, it's just funny. Like, I wonder, what did Jax do? Did he try to suck up all the other ghosts or something? Or who knows what? But when this all happened, when they got to the ending, they got the message, congratulations, you complete the game. But you can't leave until the others complete their game as well. So they're just sitting there waiting. Now, during this time, Kinger eventually starts regaining some consciousness. Basically his insane self, where he's now sane. And during this time, apparently, Kinger is actually able, we now learn that he's actually able to be in dark places. It makes him sane and comfortable. And he doesn't lose his mind, but it does take some time apparently. Because Kinger was in a dark for a lot of times, but really it took time before he could. The two were actually having a chat, and Kinger explained his wife was also in the game and she got extracted. But before they did, that happened and everything, they were in the pill fort together, and basically she was calm, and it was even enough for him to even touch her without glitching out. I gotta say, it was actually kind of interesting knowing about this, because earlier he almost got eaten by the angel's mouth, which was there a bunch of eyes in, which I got to realize something that was kind of interesting. Because it actually, he said, honey, you look beautiful, something. Because I realized that he was basically that reminded him of his wife. I'm like, wow. Anyway, besides all that ending, eventually they realize the hallway dam. They realize if they go in, they'll get possessed, but if they hold in their breath, they will actually be able to escape. Now, when this all happened, I will not deny it. This all started because they tried to go through, at least one of them, Pawnee, but she got possessed, and Kinger had to get her out. And luckily, thanks to his floating hands. But also his eyeball. I'm not gonna lie, when he threw his eyeball in, because that's how they were first find out it had an exit way, they realized, though, they couldn't. I actually thought the eyeball was going to get captured by some monster, by some claw that would eat it or something. But still, that didn't happen. I was kind of expecting that. Actually, dang, now that I think about it, I'm just going over back and forth in different scenes. But nonetheless, Pawnee realized that Kinger is not actually that crazy or insane as she thought, at least when they're not in daylight or in bright places. It also explains something part in the episode before, when Kinger was talking to Ragatha, and when they were having talk, he had a bucket over his head, and she realized, wait, you remember that? But when he took off the bucket, then he suddenly went insane again, having no idea what they were talking about. So, anyway, they eventually did left, and because they were holding their breath, Panyu's face was changing colors, while Kinger's completely glow, lighting up the hallway. And when they finally got out, they completed the ending. They all went back home, and everything kind of was a bit more interesting, as Panya now knew there was something much more to Kinger, which made her felt happy in a way, knowing she had someone to talk to in a way, besides Ragatha. Like, it was actually nice between the two having the talk while they were alone together. Now, okay, what was my opinion about this episode? I gotta say, this was actually more interesting, because first of all, if I did love horror games, but what made this game actually, this episode interesting, was that unlike the previous two episodes, Kinger and Suma, we get to know more about them and everything during this episode, which makes them both more interesting. And I actually did like that, because in the previous two, I honestly didn't really care that much about them. Kinger was funny in episode 1 with certain parts, and really didn't do that much in episode 2, and Suma really wasn't really there for that much, besides getting kidnapped in episode 1, and didn't even attend the first mission adventure in the second one when they left the circus. So anyway, honestly, this one is definitely like a 10 to me, because I love horror games, and I also actually did enjoy when they were all kind of exploring. I only kind of wish we knew a bit more what was going on with Ragatha and the other two having a tea party with the ghosts. I kind of would want to see a whole episode of that, not gonna lie. Even if it was just like 10 minutes. But yeah, that was definitely a good episode. 10 out of 10, I'll definitely give it that. Anyway, until then, Justin Game 44 signing out. Till then, see you later. Bye!